it's a good spot. Like Nebraska, there's a feel good, after losing six. If you lose six in a row and you're still in like NCAA tournament bubble conversation, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Welcome back in Nebraska shoot around. Mike Sautter, Anna Bellinghausen joining you. Mike, we're going to kick things right off with the women's team coming off a close loss, or a tough loss, I should say, against Indiana. Again, a great team in the NCAA, but what were your thoughts there of that road loss?
Yeah, it's a road loss. It doesn't matter that much. It does, but it doesn't, because Nebraska is now 3-5 in road games this year. So got to probably play a little better on the road, find a way to win. But you split the road trip, which was very much so expected, I guess, at a minimum, is to beat Purdue and then beat or then maybe lose to Indiana, or if you get that one, it's great. It's just Assembly Hall is a tough place to play, and it's not the end of the world by any means. They're now 37th in the net rankings. Clearly, I think continue to just going to be in the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be shocked. They'd have to really lose a lot here coming down the stretch for them not to be. The one kind of thing is just needing a little more consistency, right? Especially shooting. Like you can't, one game you shoot, I believe it was, 3 of 11 from three against Indiana. And then against Purdue, you shoot 2 of 13 from three in the game.
Mhm.
So you kind of need to shoot it a little better,
Yeah.
obviously from three, because that just opens things up for Markowski and in the post and things like that. So also take some, shot fakes, get to the rim, stuff like that for Britt Prince to get to the lane and either take a shot, create a shot, or pitch it out to an open 3-point shooter, collapsing defenses and stuff like that. So they got to shoot it a little better. I mean, that's not not great as the easiest way to say that, I guess.
Sure, and I think if you look at the box scores of those losses, Indiana and Ohio State, it truly is just one quarter that Nebraska wasn't hanging where they should be, because otherwise they were right with Ohio State and Indiana every single quarter. And I mean, the first quarter against Indiana down by 4, but then they only scored 10 points in that second quarter, so that's really what did it. And I think it's just playing the full 40 minutes of basketball.
Yeah, it's again, and it's same thing against Purdue. They got outscored in that second quarter
Mhm.
by 4. So the consistent kind of play for the whole 40 minutes. It's kind of a theme with Nebraska basketball, both men and women. You're if you take out that 7-point quarter, if it's I don't know, 3-point difference, it changes the whole game, especially at halftime, right? So you're not down. I guess what would it be? Double digits. You're right in the game. So they'll be okay. It's just a matter of getting more consistent play. And I mean, Alexis is probably their best player, and she didn't have as great of a game against Indiana, and she had a good game against Purdue. And then Britt Prince is probably their second best or most effective player, and same thing, had a good game against Purdue and not quite as good against Indiana. So you need to really kind of find a balance there. Like if you could just even those two games out, I think you feel pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the roster too, obviously we know there still is depth beyond losing Allison and Natalie. That's not necessarily the issue. I think it's having Britt and Alexis on the same night, but then also having other players step up. But Mike, who have been some of those faces that you think have done that for Nebraska this year?
Yeah, I mean, Jess Petrie is one that needs to probably play a little better, and Logan Nisley, same. Like they didn't have awesome games against Indiana. it's one of those where like, hey, they rebounded, but we might need you to score a little bit. They need that third, fourth kind of score in double figures, and Amaya Hargrove did that against Indiana off the bench. But it's one of those where you have to like find some consistent third score, because it kind of seems to change. Like Bertie Rimdahl was a, a double figure score against Purdue. Well, like she didn't do that. There wasn't a follow up of that, right? So you need a little bit more consistency, I think, from the starting five, if you will, or six kind of players that are playing the most. So that's something. Sorry, my dog just like decided to come into my office here.
We're all about dogs on this podcast, Mike.
He's breathing very heavy because he's that guy. So it's just
bring him in the view if you will.
Jet. Hey, no, maybe no. He's looking at me.
Not paying for his appearance, so
he's staring at you right now. Like, what is going on? So I don't know. I think he's confused. Sorry, that was very.
You didn't see this on TikTok, Mike. I don't know how avid of a TikTok user you are, but Allison Widener did post a video saying, like, basically that she's coming back from ACL again. So that's cool to see.
Another ACL injury from her. That's a lot. That's a lot.
But how about that? Just like her resilience to want to come back. I know you know her really well, and just to see that a player after going through 3 season-ending injuries still plans to play basketball again, like that's. Have you ever seen that before?
Nah, it's very rare. The third one, usually you're like, all right, we're good. Yeah. She's a tough kid, and she likes to compete, and she doesn't want to see it end that way, right? Like, she doesn't want to see her career end with an injury, and I don't blame her. Like, go ahead, give it a go. Like, you've done it twice already, and you've come back from it, and you've been kind of fine. She's a leader. Teammates love her. All of those things are important for the team, and I think she, yeah, man, like, give it a go. Who cares? Like, go try it again. Like, and if it doesn't work out, then it just wasn't meant to be. But just give it a run. Yep. Like, give it a good run. See what happens.
All right, well, 2 big matchups for the Huskers, Michigan at home and then Iowa at home. 2 huge opportunities, I think, too, because like we mentioned, Mike, this is a March Madness team, but now it's what seed can you get sort of team. So I think these next couple games are going to be pretty important.
Yeah, so Michigan, Nebraska is 2-6 against quad 1 opponents. And Nebraska is 37th in the net rankings. Michigan is 1-6 in quad 1 wins. So not a lot of their wins have come, obviously against quad 1 opponents. But they're 27th in the net ranking. So another kind of NCAA tournament team that is there. Obviously, Iowa coming off upsetting USC, which was a pretty big deal. They're playing pretty well right now, so that's turned into a pretty big rivalry. Specifically, after Nebraska beat them in Iowa City earlier this year, so that one will be very interesting. I believe that's Monday night. That one, that one should be fun. Should be a big crowd. I would expect for a Monday night game. There's not a lot else going on Monday night next week, so that one I'm excited to kind of be at that one because I think that one will be very interesting. But you got to get through Michigan first, and Nebraska's done a really good job at home, right? Like they're 16-6 overall and 12-1 at home, and been really good at home for the last 2 years now. So it's kind of protect home court thing. They snuck a couple wins on the road in the league, so that's important for them to if they can go 2-0, it'd be a really big boost to their tournament resume for these next 2 games.
All right, well, let's flip over to the men's side because this conversation is going to be a lot different than the ones that we've had previously on this men's team because they have 2 back-to-back ranked wins. Mike, is Nebraska basketball back?
Yeah, for now, I think, right? Like it's one of those like if the team if the team decides to be the tougher team, they can win every game. That's just it. Like if they just decide they're going to go out and they're going to be the tougher team. And I told myself yesterday, I was thinking about this, I'm going to try and find a different adjective than gritty, grimy, because that is something that, obviously the team used in media availabilities and things, and Coach Hoiberg did. And I'm just like, okay, like I think those adjectives have been a little played out, worn out now. So let's just call it tough. Like maybe that's it. And that's kind of what they did against Oregon, and that's kind of what they did against Illinois. They're gonna have lulls in a game that they're not gonna score, or they're gonna have segments or stanzas in the game where they're just not gonna play very well. And but if they can find a way to just battle through that adversity, which they didn't do in the 6-game losing streak, like if something bad happened, they just let it kind of snowball. Well, these last 2 games, they've done a good job of not letting that affect them. Like Illinois, probably that game probably shouldn't have went to overtime. Like Nebraska kind of controlled that game. And then Illinois went on a run. And we saw it against Iowa. We saw it against, Wisconsin just wasn't a good start. Like there's times this season where they've just let that affect them. Well, in Illinois and Oregon did the same thing at the end of the first half, where they went on a run and kind of punched them in the mouth, and Nebraska answered back in both those games. So being able to do that is very important. You lose 6 in a row, and you follow that up with 2 top 20 wins. That's pretty incredible. That's a pretty incredible coaching job that Fred Hoiberg and his staff are doing to rally the team and get them back together. Now, you can't go out like Washington and lay an egg. Washington is not, they're not like awful by any means. Great Osabar is a tough matchup for anybody. I'd look for probably Juwan Gary to get that matchup because he can get downhill. He's a big man, big, strong man that can get downhill. I call him a man. He's like 19 or something. But he is a huge guy that just, you're going to have to maybe step in and take a charge somebody. Like there's been one charge taken in the last, I don't know, like feels like forever. And that was Connor Essegian that took it against Illinois, which is not the guy you expect to do that. So how does that look defensively? Because Washington can get a little bit out of control at times. I don't think anyone, and if you give some truth serum to Nebraska men's basketball fans and even maybe some people around the program, I don't think anyone expected them that they would go 2-0 on this Northwest road trip. It's a huge opportunity to go 2-0 on this Northwest road trip because Washington is last in the league. But they've been in every game and they play really well at home. They just beat Minnesota at Minnesota, so they're playing better. First year coach Danny Sprinkle, he's gonna do a good job there. He really is. His recruiting class is gonna be, they're pretty good. So it's just a matter of kick Washington when they're down. Like, how about that? Like, just kick them while they're down a little bit here, and Nebraska will be in good shape. And even if they do lose that game, it's not a huge deal. It's not great, but it's not a huge problem, issue, all of that, unless it's some of the things that have affected this team all year, like not valuing possessions, and not starting the game or the second half, with energy and effort, and what Coach Hoiberg said after the Oregon game, like punching people in the mouth, like out of the, second half. If they don't do that stuff, if there's a slow start, then now we're like, oh my gosh, I thought we got through this in these last two games. But I think they'll be fine. I think they found something. I think that the changes to the starting lineup have added some energy, and really messing with the starting lineup a little bit. Like the last two games, it hasn't been the same, and it's just going more off of matchups,
Yeah.
and that's probably what they need to look at more. Inserting Sam Hoiberg into that starting lineup has helped from an energy and effort standpoint. So we'll see. He doesn't. He's not going to score 15 points. Like, it's just not him. But from that energy and kind of getting off to a good start, it's really helped, and specifically in the last two games for sure.
So you bring up Sam. Is there any other catalyst that you would point to for this turnaround from losing 6 to beating 2 top 20 teams?
Yeah, Andrew Morgan inserting in the starting lineup has been huge, because he just provides a little bit more offensive threat than Braxton Mia did. He also kind of provides a little more energy. Dude's like, he's on the floor and kind of, there's sometimes he falls down and on the floor that he probably shouldn't be, but there's also times that he's just fighting. Like, he's just kind of giving it all he's got. And I think that's been important. Now, the catalyst has been their best player is playing like their best player.
Yeah.
And that's important. And he's taking over the game. They also are putting Bryce Williams, their best player, they're putting the ball in his hands more to initiate the offense. He's also guarding some of the point guards or people that are primary ball handlers for the other team. I think it keeps him more engaged if they do that. So it's helped him tremendously. We're talking 28 and 27 points against 2 top 20 teams. That's incredible. So he's been good. And Juwan Gary's effort and energy. Those two seniors have been I think that, well, I feel good about the fact that there was a quote, air quotes, whatever, come to Jesus meeting between them and maybe everyone else and maybe the coaching staff that kind of rallied the troops a little bit, and it seems to be working right now. And Bryce, hey man, maybe the message was, Bryce, we need you. You're going to have to score 20 plus a game for us to win. You just are. So just go do it. He's very capable of doing it. So, and that's what's happened the last couple of games. And he's rebounded well. He's had 8 rebounds, in the last 2 games. So from a guard spot, that's pretty good. So their effort and energy, and defensively, they've been a lot better too. Now, people point to 3-point percentage defense has been better. Well, that's the matchups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin shoots a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes. Purdue shoots a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes. Illinois doesn't. They took a lot of threes. They don't make them, and they didn't make them that game, and all year they haven't made them. Oregon kind of the same way. They're not, Illinois came in shooting 32% or something from 3. That's not what they're built to do. They're built to rebound, which obviously they did against Nebraska, but Nebraska was never going to win that rebounding battle against Illinois. It just wasn't going to happen. But they did against Oregon, and they basically cut up Oregon's pressured defense. They sliced that thing up. Oregon, they didn't make any adjustments or anything, which is very odd. But Nebraska did make an adjustment, so that it's a good spot. Nebraska, there's a feel good, after losing 6. If you lose 6 in a row and you're still in NCAA tournament bubble conversation, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Tells you've won some pretty big games, and they have. So now it's just kind of finishing the job. You look at the next handful of games, the rest of the season. Now you're starting to look okay, can they win this one? Can they win this one? There's only 9 left, in the season. Can they finish 5-4 or something? You start kind of doing that in your head. And there's big opportunities still left. It's just, if you want to be the upper, you know, half now of the Big Ten, you gotta find a way to win some games here, and you can't lose, against Washington, who's the last place team in the league. Like, it's one of those where you gotta find a way to get that done. Now it's a 9:30 p.m. Central Time tip, which is amazingly late for people like me.
You're gonna have some late night thoughts.
Yeah, the final thoughts will be about midnight. I think it'll be a final end of the day thing. So, but it's fine. Like, I could sleep some other time, I guess.
Sleep when you're dead, Mike.
That's been my motto probably my whole life.
So for Nebraska basketball fans on the men's side, what needs to happen? Or if the season ended today, is this team in the tournament? Like, how confident are you that this team makes the tournament and not have to play a playing game?
Ooh, well, I'm not overly confident that they're in the tournament right now. I'm kind of not. Like, I think they still need to find, like, pull up the schedule here. So you're at Washington. Then Sunday, it's kind of a quick turnaround because you're traveling on Thursday, and then that's like your day off, and then you have Friday, Saturday, get ready for Ohio State, which is at 1 on Sunday. So it's an afternoon game, but it's at home. So that's an opportunity. You have 2 home games in a row against Maryland, who they probably should have beat at Maryland. Maryland's also playing really well right now. So that's what next week looks like. If you can win those 2 games, it'd be huge, because then you go to Northwestern on the 16th, and Northwestern, Barnizer is out for the year, and he's given Nebraska fits the last 2 years. So if you can go to Northwestern and pick up a win, then you get that other then you're +1 in their, internal matrix that they look at in the league, where, road wins count and don't count, and however they figure that stuff up. And then you go to Penn State, and they're playing that game at the Bryce Jordan Center, which is a lot different than playing on campus, like in their rec center place that they play. So it's going to be, you want to talk about bring your own energy game. That's an opportunity. Penn State does force a lot of turnovers, though. They pressure you and play good defense. So again, it's taking care of the ball. And then you got a huge one against Michigan. I mean, Michigan's pretty good. So 2 7-footers are a problem. And then Minnesota at Ohio State, and you finish with Iowa and Lincoln. So you look at that, they're like, you could make a case, like, if you split with Ohio State, because you still have the home and away with them, and then you beat Washington. So beat Washington, split with Ohio State, Maryland at Northwestern, at Penn State. Maybe you split those 2 away games that you have left, and then pick up, like, that Michigan game. A lot will kind of ride on that. And then obviously Iowa, you got to find a way to beat an Iowa team that frankly had no business winning in Iowa City against you. Now you're looking at like a pretty good end here if you can do that. So the schedule certainly in the Big Ten is hard, but it kind of lightens up a little bit. We're talking, you're not playing Michigan State and Purdue back to back. Like, you're not playing them again. You're not playing Wisconsin again.
You've gotten those out of the way.
Yeah, you don't play Illinois again. You don't play USC or UCLA again. You like the top-ish part of that league. You're through that part. So now you can kind of build some momentum, and your resume looks a lot better. And if you can somehow, I don't know, like, get to that 9-11 mark, which is very doable right now, you're gonna be okay. Like, you're definitely, you're probably bubbling, you're probably on the other side, the right side of the bubble. You're probably that 11 seed, whatever, if you can get to 9-11, just because they lost those 6 games in a row. So you definitely feel good about it if you can finish that 9-11. 8-12, your net and your KenPom and all those metrics will be good.
Mm-hmm.
Still, even if you're 8-12, but it's a lot harder to make a case for the post making the NCAA tournament if you're 8-12. A lot there'd be some hand wringing nationally with an 8-12 team making it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, moral of the story, the hopes are alive for Nebraska ball. Fans should be excited. We will touch base with you next week on Nebraska Shoot Around. Thank you guys so much for joining us.